In terms of activity, we're sitting on panels and doing stuff like this in this current market because there's not much to be done. Although, historically, really in the last 3 or 4 or 5 years, healthcare has become a really attractive place, and it's attracted a lot of dollars and a lot of capital, and a lot of new firms that historically hadn't invested in healthcare have come into the space. And I think that's principally driven by, the massive, massive shifts in healthcare, where you have a massively growing sector of the economy. It's 14% of the GDP. It's growing at high single digits. It's predicted to be 20% of GDP going forward, and it's a $3-ish trillion business. So there's a lot of different areas to get at. I think the thing that we've struggled with, and I think this will prove itself out over the next few years, because we've been in a really good cycle over the last 5 or 6 years, is that healthcare, while it's big and growing, and while it should be a very steady industry, is actually, when you look at it in our country, we've turned it into a really pretty cyclical business, and you have situations where Medicare and Medicaid chronically kind of overfund, they underfund, they swing back and forth, and then of course you have managed care, which is now, over the last 20 years has established itself as a pretty big player in the space, where you've gone through massive underwriting cycles. And I think all of that, we saw that in spades in the 90s with the M.B.A. You saw that with the managed care industry suffering significantly in terms of margin compression. You saw that in the hospital space with average length of stays coming out and huge amounts of capacity coming out of the industry. I think the changes that you're going to see going forward are going to be not necessarily as severe as what you've seen. I think DRG's coming in, where you basically shifted the whole system away from a cost plus based system to DRG and to a per diem payment methodology. That's all taken hold, and so the SNF industry now is not cost plus, and everything's kind of shifted away. So most of the shifts going forward are going to be a function of Medicare dealing with the fact that it's basically going to be insolvent by 2018 or 2019. I'm not sure what the latest estimate is, and it changes depending on who you talk to. And the fact that managed care has consolidated a lot, and I think that'll mitigate some of the underwriting cycles, the volatility of the swings. Although you're still going to have, you're going to still have some cycles going forward, and I think we're basically at what really is what the apex. We're at an apex right now. I think we're at a peak in terms of how, in terms of healthcare as an investment space. I mean, since 2000, it's been an unbelievable space. You've had managed care pricing increases, in the high single digits. And hospitals have done well up until a couple years ago, where bad debt and volumes have come under pressure. So I think you're going to have the next wave is going to be people thinking about how do I solve this fundamental dilemma where healthcare is growing, but it's eating up an increasing portion of our GDP. So that's going to be oriented around getting people into lower cost settings, paying for performance and things like that. In terms of sectors, what does that mean in terms of sectors? There's various different ways you can play the hospital space. There's various different ways you can play the provider space. There's various different ways you can play the managed care space. And maybe I'll stop here and we can talk a little bit more specifically about those spaces, and I'll let my colleagues jump in.